Hi guys, hold on for a second. Before we proceed to the video, I have something very important to tell you. Professor John Wickoffers has published his new book in collaboration with Little French Media, and the title of the book is Neoliberalism, Inequality, and Authoritarianism. This book details how neoliberalism impacts the geopolitical economy in the 21st century. You can buy it from Amazon, and the link is in the description. Thank you. Now let's proceed to the video.
Hello everyone, welcome. I want to invite you to a video on the late former President Jimmy Carter. He passed away on December 29th, 2024. He was 100 years of age. He was the 39th President of the United States. There has been enormous coverage about this president, controversial while he was in office for any number of reasons, especially foreign affairs as well as domestically the inflationary issue. Obviously, coincidence of history. It's just so happened that during his presidency, there was the Iranian Revolution that he had to deal with. There was the Nicaraguan Revolution. There was also the Soviet invasion of Afghanistan, where he approved CIA covert operations to support the Mujahideen in Afghanistan. All presidents, all heads of state are judged by the results of their public policy, domestic policy, and foreign policy, and how that impacts their own people, not just a handful of people, but all people. Okay, Jimmy Carter, by the way, would be the first one to admit that. And I believe Jimmy Carter is no different. I would like to point out, and as you will see in the analytical video, in the longer video, and very analytical video, that there were two, in fact, Jimmy Carters. There was, I like to start with the good one. There was the Jimmy Carter who was deeply committed to civil rights, deeply committed to social justice, deeply committed to international peace, deeply committed to human rights. One of the very few American political leaders made some efforts, at least during his presidency, but especially after he left office, to speak out against the apartheid Zionist state in Israel and in favor of Palestinians. This is not something that's you find in the United States among the political elites. Very, very few. The Jimmy Carter who left after leaving office in '81, obviously Ronald Reagan took office, is the first Jimmy Carter. That Jimmy Carter, who won the Nobel Prize for Peace, of course, for his tireless efforts to secure peace on a world scale and to genuinely support human rights, to end the apartheid state in Israel. That Jimmy Carter, and the Jimmy Carter who was committed to the Habitat for Humanity, committed to social justice, is a person to be admired. The way he lived is also another element that people should admire, because we don't look at what people say, because they say a lot of things, but we look at their actions. People are judged by their actions, whether you're in the private sector or the public sector. Everyone is judged by their actions. And Jimmy Carter lived a modest life. He didn't go out after becoming president, like almost all of them, to raise millions of dollars and to become a multimillionaire like the rest. And we know this has been the case with all living presidents um, um, of the last 50 years until today, by the way. He had a modest life in Georgia as a peanut farmer, and he was devoted, in fact, to social justice and speaking out about peace. I was very struck by two things he did as a former president. One is that in 2016, he deviated from his own party's mainstream, that is the Democratic Party's mainstream line, which was to vote for Hillary Clinton because he knew that she was deeply immersed in the military industrial complex and was a militarist, pro Israel, pro Zionist, uh, uh, and itching for more military involvement as a Secretary of State for Obama. She proved that much using the Department of State to destabilize the Middle East as well as the Balkans. The um, Jimmy Carter voted for Bernie Sanders, Senator Bernie Sanders, who was a New Deal um, Democrat. Bernie Sanders remains a New Deal Democrat, and against the military-industrial complex, against militarism, in favor of resolving issues through international dialogue, through diplomacy, in other words. And that is, I like to remember the former president as that. Now, there's also the other Jimmy Carter. That is the Jimmy Carter who, as president, has a record, both domestically and in foreign affairs. Domestically, Jimmy Carter uh, became involved with David Rockefeller's Trilateral Commission. I talk a lot about this group, um, the Trilateral Commission, very influential in US politics, but also internationally. He became involved with it incidentally when he became governor of Georgia. He called up David Rockefeller, who was back then head of the Chase Manhattan Bank. Now that's part of JP Morgan, by the way, the largest bank in the world. And even the Rockefeller was surprised by the call. And he said, well, you know, the state of Georgia is is selling a lot of state bonds up there in New York, and I'd like to meet your bankers. David Rockefeller met with him in New York, and he was very impressed and made him a member of the Trilateral Commission. And in fact, Jimmy Carter's cabinet was filled with members of the Trilateral Commission, including, of course, his vice president, as well as his national security advisor, Zbigniew Brzezinski, who was a hardliner, cold warrior, not at all befitting the image of a Democrat. Now, Jimmy Carter had the opportunity when he became president to follow along the lines of the man who ran for president in 1972, namely George McGovern, who was a New Deal Democrat, like Bernie Sanders today. For those of you who don't know who George McGovern was, another Bernie Sanders of the 1970s. In fact, George McGovern supported Jimmy Carter during his campaign, by the way. He supported him because he sensed that Jimmy Carter was going that route of Keynesian economics, social development, using the fiscal system, that is the tax system, to make sure that that we do not have a maldistribution of income toward the upper classes, toward the millionaires and the billionaires. So George McGovern supported him because he thought he was going that route. and he supported him because he thought he was committed to pacifism. However, in 1977, the first year that Jimmy Carter was in office, McGovern withdrew that support, realizing that Jimmy Carter was in fact wholly committed, as the New York Times pointed out at the time, to Wall Street and to the military-industrial complex. So there are two Jimmy Carters: the Jimmy Carter of as a former president after leaving office in '81, and then there's the Jimmy Carter as president. In this video, this is the last thing I'll say. In this video that is analytical and long, sort of long, I point out that Jimmy Carter actually laid the foundations for the neoliberal era and the militarist era of the Ronald Reagan presidency, which of course continued with George Herbert Walker Bush, and even with Clinton. Okay, so the historical antecedents of neoliberalism were actually laid during the Jimmy Carter era. This is not to say that Jimmy Carter institutionalized neoliberalism in the manner that Ronald Reagan did, but he laid the foundations for it. He started out with some anti-labor policies, pro-big bank and deregulation policies, and this is the sort of direction, of course, that neoliberals wanted to go, and they were pushing very hard during the Carter era. And he also, especially after the Iranian Revolution erupted, Jimmy Carter took a turn to the far right in foreign policy, and he used that to justify some of the anti-Keynesian policies he was and pro-neoliberal policies, again antecedents to neoliberalism, that he would be pursuing. I want to invite all of you to watch the longer video on President Jimmy Carter, who I believe, by the way, I personally believe, I don't like to rank presidents because it's silly, it's inane and pointless, because presidents are judged by public policy results for all of society and globally, of course. But I happen to believe that he was a decent man. Deep down, he was a decent man. He was a good man, and in my estimation, the very best former vice president, not as president, but former vice president, and well deserving of the Nobel Prize that he was awarded. Thank you very much for watching. By all means, leave comments, and please subscribe to this educational channel, which my very good friend Asad Ali manages. Thank you very much.